Tokyo Revengers, a show that was super hyped just a few... months ago. But I finally managed to watch it, so here are my thoughts. We are introduced to our main character Takemichi, who is just your average guy basically. Or is he? So basically Takemichi is going about his day, business as usual, until two decisive events happen. The first one is him finding out that his former girlfriend during middle school, Tachibana Hinata, has been involved in a tragic accident causing her death. Secondly, while lost in thought and waiting for the approaching train, he gets pushed on a railway track by an unknown culprit. But instead of dying or getting isekai'd like normal people, he discovers his ability to go back in time. Now another vital piece of information is that the brutal accident leading to Hinata's passing was caused by Toman, which was just a biker gang containing of middle schoolers when Takemichi was young, but has now apparently developed into a full-on mafia, controlling various parts of the city. Takemichi's goal is it now to prevent Toman's evil ways, so all these terrible events never happen. So if you're like me, you might be thinking that stopping a whole fucking criminal syndicate, when you are yourself nothing more than just an average Joe, sounds pretty outrageous. And you are correct, that's the point. And before you're asking, hey, isn't there a simpler way of stopping all this? Like for example, simply preventing Hina from going to the place of her future demise on a precise date. Well, for some unknown reason, these much more obvious methods turn out unsuccessful. Anyway, his plan is therefore to get to know the founders of Toman, you know, back when they were younger and still somewhat approachable, and change the course of events. Now, the thing with Takemichi as an adult is that he's, kind of a loser. And although he was arguably a bit better off back in the day, he's at first at least nowhere near capable enough to change history. And the show is very big on emphasizing that. He really is searching for every opportunity to get his ass handed to him. And I mean hard. Like very hard. It's pretty intense. At first I thought, okay, so they'll tussle a bit, I mean boys be boys, right? Wrong. They are not holding back. Seriously, I think 80% of these characters are sociopaths. They are insane. I don't know if it's due to the excessive head trauma from constantly getting beat up, but another thing you need to know about Takemichi is that he's also very stupid. People on the internet might give him shit for being useless and a crybaby, which to be fair, he most definitely is. My man couldn't even wait 1.5 minutes for the opening to end before starting to burst out into tears yet again. Which is something even the show itself is aware of. But you know what, I won't give him shit for that. He is a crybaby, well to be fair the stuff he has to go through is pretty messed up. He is useless, well to be fair it's hard being a quote-unquote normal kid in a world where everyone 2 years older than you got the JoJo treatment. However, I will give him shit for being an absolute idiot. He has 5 brain cells and only uses 2 of them, but more on that later. What's interesting about Tokyo Revengers is that the author behind it was actually a gang member himself. And I can definitely see how he might have taken some inspiration from his past to make the story. The gang dynamics are definitely where the show really shines, and there are some pretty neat character arcs to be found here as well. My favorite one so far is probably Baji. No spoilers, but let me say this guy is an absolute jackass. In all the right ways. Another thing that I really like about Tokyo Revengers is that it's weirdly relatable at times. It doesn't really matter if you grew up in a sheltered or in a rough neighborhood, almost anyone can relate to meeting a bunch of dogs back in the day. Dogs you would have loved to stand up against, telling them that they are assholes and then punch them straight in their fuckface. But you couldn't. Maybe you were weak, outnumbered, or both. It's a simple conflict that almost anyone can relate to, which is why it doesn't surprise me that the show was able to attract so many people. Of course, not everyone has experienced being part of a gang or whatever, but nevertheless there are some aspects of the show that are oddly reminiscent. For example, how age was probably a crucial part of the social hierarchy when you were young. I mean, once you're an adult, life just becomes terrible the older you get. But back in the day, it sure was a big deal. I still remember how in 5th grade the 7th graders seemed so much bigger and more powerful, when in reality they probably look something like this. And don't even get me started on the 10th graders. They were demigods, beings of divine status, practically adults at that point. It was truly another perspective back then, and I think Tokyo Revengers captures this in hindsight somewhat bizarre social structure pretty well. Okay, as I stated, Takemichi is very dumb. And I honestly feel bad for his voice actor. You know how in anime, characters for some reason always make sounds when they are surprised? Well, because Takemichi is such an airhead, that is something he does a lot. It's annoying. Takemichi's stupidity is annoying at best, but at worst it was straight up detrimental for my watching experience. Sometimes it was really hard for me to focus on the narrative when the main character was just so unreasonably dense. Let's look at one scene to demonstrate what I'm talking about. Spoiler for episode 9 and 10, so just skip to the timestamp if you haven't watched it. So basically Draken just got stabbed. Even though Takemichi knew this was gonna happen, but okay, whatever. I want you to observe what Takemichi is doing to save his friend, who is literally bleeding to death right now. Look! Look! He sits there for what seems to be minutes. I mean, the scene literally goes on like this for minutes, with him just doing nothing. Look, I get that not everyone knows about first aid, even though you should, and he's probably in shock or whatever. But come on, this is ridiculous. But do not worry, after 10 minutes of him aimlessly staring a hole, or rather another hole into Draken, and grieving about the fact how he can't do anything to help his friend, instead of actually trying to help his friend, he finally decides to do something. Bro, we know that you have a cell phone, just call an ambulance. No. Takemichi has the brilliant idea to carry his friend to the hospital by himself. Yeah, sure. Carrying somebody with an open wound who is also like 3 times your size. Brilliant idea. But the best part of this whole ordeal is yet to come. Just a few moments later, these two come around saying, hey, we called an ambulance. Okay, an ambulance was an option then. Well, in that case, this whole operation was completely pointless. Like, actually pointless, because even before our characters are interrupted by these guys looking for trouble, Takemichi drops Draken off. He isn't even trying to bring him to the hospital anymore. So why were you trying to carry him, probably making him lose a gallon of blood in the process, if you were gonna wait for the ambulance anyway? All this extra movement must have caused Draken to lose way more blood than necessary. So at this point he is probably dead. Oh, well, never mind then, seems like he is fine. There are a lot of other things you could point at, for example, what are the parents, or just adults in general doing, when literal children beat each other to death in the middle of the street? What the hell did they feed Mikey in order for him to develop superpowers? You could spend day and night nitpicking at those things, but honestly, I'm someone who is willing to give a show the benefit of the doubt. Most of the time, these are minor things to me that really don't bother me that much. But sometimes it's just really hard to feel the emotional impact when you're sitting there completely baffled by the logic of a scene, or rather by the non-existent logic of our main character. Because even though I gave episode 10 a lot of shit just now, I actually thought that it was story-wise a quite good episode. So, to wrap things up, did I enjoy Tokyo Revengers? Overall, yes, I did. However, if I had to pinpoint what my main problem with the show is, I would say it still seems to lack maturity, mainly in regards to our main character. It feels like the dude who wrote the story doesn't seem to be quite sure yet how to give Takemichi a meaningful role in the story, aside from full-time L-taker with an occasional W so the story can move forward. Nevertheless, I see potential in the overall concepts, and while the execution wasn't flawless, it was certainly appealing enough to constantly capture my attention. At the time of me recording this, there isn't a confirmed release date of Season 2, but I'm pretty sure we will get it soon. And you know what? I will definitely check it out. So for now, thank you for watching and goodbye.